learn. Be thankful for the difficult times. During those times, you grow. Be thankful for your limitations because they give you the opportunities for improvement. Be thankful for each new challenge because it will build your strength and character. Be thankful for your mistakes, they will teach you valuable lessons. Be thankful when you're tired and weary because it means you've made a difference. It's easy to be thankful for all the good things. A life of rich fulfillment comes to those who are also thankful for the setbacks. Hey, this is Nilofer Safdar, author, summit host, coach, healer, and you're tuned in to the Genius Activator podcast. Every week, I bring in the geniuses who spend their whole life in the boundless realm of genius. We explore their genius stories and collect some cool tips on how you can spend more of your lives in your zone of genius, where creativity flows freely. And today's guest is Michael Padirano. Join us as Michael shares his inspiring journey towards impacting souls and leaving a legacy of elevating humanity through knowledge and understanding. Welcome, Michael. I am so honored to have you with me tonight.
I'm
Well, it's a
honored to
nice
be
year.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's late morning here, so it's a little bit different, but it's I appreciate it. So thank you very much for having me. I'm honored.
And don't you love technology where you can be sitting on the opposite sides of the world, and where it's morning your time, night my time, and still in this moment of time and space, we are connected as we are connected to all our audience today, isn't it?
It it's I look at it different than many people do. I mean, we are in the most connected time of human history where we have access to reach anywhere, anyone in the world, and I really look at it as a blessing, right? The ability to be able to communicate and be able to interact with people all over the world, different cultures, different religions, different races, different everything. And we can use it as a tool to come together, or we could use it as a weapon to divide and conquer. And unfortunately, the divisive nature of humanity seems to be more prevalent today. But I do believe and I have hope that over the next short period of time, and as the younger generation, my kids, potentially even your kids, right? Because I don't know what the age gap is, but I know there's a decent one. Like, I feel like they're going to make that real shift. They're going to understand how the technology can really benefit and harm, and they're going to choose benefit over harm. That's what I believe.
Absolutely. I remember it was almost 30 years ago when I first moved to Saudi Arabia. And I used to feel so isolated there. And I would just, think, I wish there was a way in which I could just sit at home and be connected to everyone, where I could learn whatever I wanted to learn and where I could teach what I wanted to teach. And literally, I'm living my dream today, and it was just 30 years. It's like 30 years is not a big span of time, and it didn't take me 30 years to achieve this. Like it took me another, say, 5 or 6 years, and I was connected, so it's beautiful. So this is the Genius Activator podcast. So Michael, I'd love for you to share your story of discovering your inner genius. And I know, when we talked before, you said, oh, I don't have just one story, I have many stories. So let's go with the story which you think will have the most impact. How did you discover your inner genius, and what is your inner genius?
So I'm going to go with the most recent story, which November 16th of 2022, I had a major stroke, a triple stroke, while I was driving in the car with my son. And, um, up until that point, I was on my healing journey from my childhood trauma and becoming self aware and self understanding. attempting to practice gratitude and attempting to understand myself at a much deeper level, because I call spirituality the journey of self understanding, right? Because I don't think that it's all woo woo. I don't think that it's witches and wizards and crazy stuff. I think in a very practical way, it's the journey of self understanding. Because the more we connect to ourselves, the more we connect to our higher power, whatever we want to call it, it doesn't matter. The higher power doesn't care what we call it. It's just honoring it and honoring ourselves through it, in my beliefs, right? So it's, when I had that stroke, I mean, obviously it was a shock. And because I was already on my healing journey and working with different practices and different modalities, I had a different belief structure than most. So the first thing I did was, um, I was in the car with my son. We were pulling up to a red light. And as I pulled up to the red light, I looked at my son and I said, Thomas, something's really wrong. I don't know what it is. I've never felt like this before. And he said that as we stopped at the red light, um, my eyes rolled to the back of my head. And that was it. Like it was this event that neither of us could explain at the time. And then he said the light turned green and he tapped me on the shoulder and said, Dad, it's time to the light's green, we gotta go, you gotta drive home. And I opened my eyes and I drove home. Like nothing ever happened. He said I wasn't as responding to him, but I was very capable of driving, which I have no idea how. And I believe in divine intervention because I have no other explanation for how I was able to drive at that point, having a triple major stroke at that point, which I found out later. The first thing I did was I just got home and I was very tired. So, with all the modalities I learned, I put on frequency music on the TV, YouTube app, smart TV, right? So I put on frequency music and I just kept going to sleep. So my son was home from school that day. My other two kids were in school, and I basically slept off and on until my kids got home around 3. So I mean, this was first thing in the morning. Like I got home around 11, so I slept till 3. I got that 4 hours of sleep, and then as soon as I got home, I helped them get upstairs and get set up and get in bed earlier than normal because 7 o'clock I banished them upstairs so that I have my space for me downstairs to work, to do whatever I need to do. And so at this point, they went upstairs to go to sleep, and I immediately went right back to bed. Immediately. Which for me, I was not a good sleeper then, so I was just really tired. I had no idea what was going on. And I ended up sleeping from, let's say, 6 or 6:30 or 7 p.m. even say, straight till 5 a.m. the next morning when I got up to start getting my kids ready for school. When I woke up the next morning, I I realized that half my body was paralyzed. My left side of my body was my face was drooping. I wasn't coherently speaking. Waking them up in the morning was challenging. Getting upstairs to get them was torture because I literally had no mobility on my left arm and my left leg. Um, so I texted a friend of mine and he called me immediately and he goes, "What's going on?" And he said he couldn't understand a word I said. But then he responded and he goes, "You had a stroke. I'm on my way." So he ended up getting here. We dropped my son off at school. My other two were already on the bus and on the way to school. He took me straight to the ER. Now, first of all, American medicine, walking into the emergency room saying I had a stroke yesterday, 26 hours earlier, they didn't even believe me. They thought I was lying because the medication for strokes, for anyone who doesn't know, they have a 1 hour medication, a 2 hour medication, a 4 hour medication. They have absolutely nothing for after that. And they didn't believe me, and then they admitted me into the emergency room, did a scan, and before they even told me what happened, they already admitted me into the hospital because my blood pressure and my blood sugar was off the charts. Because when you have a stroke, your whole system resets. So what they explained to me later was the nurses were amazing. Doctor wasn't a fan of, but the nurses were unbelievable. They are superheroes of the world, nurses. I don't know how they do what they do, but it's amazing. and they were very caring and conscientious and explanatory with me. And they're like, well, your blood pressure is going to stay high because that's your body healing to make sure that the blood flows through your body. So they did the scans to make sure I didn't have brain bleed, or that I didn't have like a clot or something that blocked it. They had no explanation for the stroke, but they knew that it was a triple stroke. So the next day came around. They were doing all sorts of tests on me, all these different things. I was starting to get some mobility back already on my left side, which they one said was abnormal, and two, I was starting to become a little bit more coordinated, because when you don't have movement on half your body, you start getting vertigo, and you start, feeling vertigo and feeling like you're going to fall over. Um, so it was a very interesting experience, that first 24 hours in the hospital. My friend stayed at the house. He watched the kids for me that night, made sure they got to school. And the doctor came into the hospital room the next morning, and the first thing he said to me is, he goes, so the next 2 days, we're going to have all these series of tests. And I said, the next 2 days, I have kids to take care of. And he looked at me and he said, well, you're not going home until we're done with these tests. And it was a weekend. So my kids would be home by themselves without me. And it was one of those things where I had more faith in my belief structures and my capacity to heal myself than I did in the system that was attempting to call child services for my kids. Because he said, well, I'll just call child services and they'll take care of your kids for the weekend until you can get out of here. And my kids that come from a trauma background where they were abused by their mother and her ex-boyfriend, and child services did nothing to help them or support them. They didn't even look out for them in any way, shape, or form, which is a whole nother issue and a whole nother topic. But I didn't want to put them in this position to where that's what they would be susceptible to, because it was so much effort and conscious parenting to help them heal from their trauma. I didn't want to re-traumatize or make it come to, make it come more to the surface. So it was one of those things where I checked myself out of the hospital because the doctor they didn't want to let me leave. So I checked myself out of the hospital, and they refused to give me anything, medication, anything, because I was signing myself out. And he said, if you don't go see a doctor, you're going to be dead. And the nurse was crying. She's like, your kids, you can't do this to them. I said to her, I said, I'm going to go to the doctors. I'm going to get everything done and taken care of. I need to be at my own house, and I need to be sleeping. I need to take care of myself, and I need to be there for my kids, and my kids need to see that I'm still breathing. So over the next 6 months, I completely healed myself, did my own personal physical therapy. I did go to physical therapy, but it only lasted about 4 weeks. And it took me about 4 weeks to get into it. But I'm 100% healed. I'm healthier than I've ever been in my whole life. Went to every doctor that they've sent me to, asked me to go to, and they've sent me to many. And it's been quite the experience and quite the remarkable gifts that came from it. And that's the easiest way I can explain it. One, it's a miracle. Two, it's the gifts that have come from it are remarkable. I have learned the gift and the value of each day that we wake up. So it turned into I call it my stroke of gratitude. Because one, it helped me release attachments to all people, places, and things. So I don't try to control and manipulate everything around me anymore. And I talk with my hands, so we're just gonna have to run with this. I look like a side referee for a soccer game. We're good.
I love
Um,
talking with my hands too, but I'm not talking, so my hands are
yeah,
still.
no, you're letting me just talk, and I don't know when to stop. But it's it's I look at it very simply. It's 400 trillion to one scientifically that would be alive at a human at this point in time. Scientifically, 400 trillion to one, which is 500 times the global population, or even more than that, I think. But it's this absurd multiple of us being human. And then 150,000 people on average die every day. We do not understand the value of waking up. And here in the US, as a majority, I'm not going to say the whole country, We definitely take for granted running water, shelter, access to food, and other things like that that so much of the world doesn't have access to. We
Absolutely.
live in
I agree. And you know, the reason why I'm listening to you silently is because 2 years back, my dad had a stroke. And you know, I was with my parents, you know, in those days, and I know what a stroke can do. And for you to say that, you know, you had a stroke while you were driving your son, you know, I was going to blurt out this question: what happened? You were driving, right? And you said that you just, you know, your son told you to drive home, and you just drove home. I mean, that was amazing. That was so. I'm like sitting here listening to you, and I'm like, yeah, this whole thing is a miracle. Absolutely.
there's divine intervention. Whether we acknowledge it or not is our choice. And I firmly believe that divine intervention is present in every one of our lives. Whether we choose to believe it or whether we go into that egoic mode and have to write it off as science, write it off as this, write it off as that, that's up to us, how we choose to perceive things. The reality is there's 8.1 billion perceptions on this planet. Every single one of them is true. Every single one of them is accurate. The only way we understand anyone else's perception is by having the desire to understand, walking into things with curiosity and understanding. So nobody's truth is wrong. We all have our own experience and our own journey. We're interdependent, not codependent on each other's journey. So it's where do we find that balance within ourselves to objectively look at our own life, take a step back, and really honor the miracles that they are. Because it really is miracles. There's miracles every day. Waking up in the morning is a miracle. Just so many people don't. There's wars all over the world right now, which we're not going to go into the politics of it or even the belief structure of it, but they're everywhere. There's tragedies all over the planet every day. There's kids working as, children's slavery for mega corporations around the world, right? There's all these crazy things going on. And at the end of the day, we want to question the miracles because that's something that tangibly we can't perceive. So I feel like that's the major disconnect, one of the major disconnects in humanity currently. It's not the only by far, but it is one.
Absolutely. So, so you know, coming back to the conversation of genius, right? So, what did you discover about yourself in this journey?
So I've discovered so much, right? And I'm not going to minimize the discoveries, but if you want the simplest way to look at it, it's embodying gratitude. When I wake up in the morning, I thank my higher power for waking up and having the opportunity to live into my purpose every day of impacting souls and sharing my stories and helping them to look at their own stories in a more objective way. And I'm honored to be able to live that life. It's not perfect. I'm on my healing journey every day for the rest of my life. I call it a state of growing forward because there's no plateau, there's no end line. The end line is death. I'm not in a rush to get there. I'm enjoying the journey. I love it. And I love being in that proactive state of healing and evolving and growing daily. I look at life very simply. It's lessons and blessings. That's it. There's nothing in between. It's either a lesson or a blessing. And I choose to live that way every day. And it has been this enormous impactor of every part of my life.
So you was talking about you healed yourself within the next 6 months.
Mhm.
What did you do?
So I was trained by 7 different shamans during my healing journey, and they taught me the value of balancing energy and understanding the alchemization of the human experience. So it was a lot of energy healing, sometimes Reiki, sometimes other type quantum healing, all these different things, all these different labels. But to me, it's all the same thing. It's energy based healing and also a lot of frequency based healing. So I listen to lots of frequencies to help to realign my body and heal my brain and heal my every facet of me. because
So,
everything in this world has a frequency. So I found what aligned to me at the time.
so how did you find what aligned to you, the frequencies?
Intuitively. It was
Okay.
purely intuitively. It was, this looks right, this feels right. I'm gonna go rest to this. I mean, that first 6 months, it was, takes 3 hours for me to, I have 3 hours every morning to get my three kids out of the house in three different schools, three different bus, or three different transportations, three different everything. That first 6 months, I'd get them ready, and as soon as they got out of the house, I went to sleep for 4 hours. That 3 hours drained me so much of just getting them ready, because remember, my body was healing from a stroke. I was still half paralyzed. Like, I was still dragging my leg behind me, hanging my arm by my side, not having mobility with it. And I was up and downstairs taking care of the kids. So by the time they got out in the morning, I literally slept. That's all I did. You want the best healer in this world? Rest. But our world right now is so opposed to resting. We have this grind, we have this chase that we live in as humanity, as a collective. It's chasing and building externally our validation and all these different things. The real value that we possess is us being us. We don't have to fight for it. It comes to us when we allow it to. There's a reason that you hear the stories of Viktor Frankl and uh, Edith Eger and even what's the former prime minister of South Africa? I can't remember his name for him. Nelson Mandela, and all these individuals that through the worst of his circumstances, they found their peace, because it's not external; it's an internal journey. But the disconnect from ourselves is where the financial systems prosper, because you're always chasing that external. So I look at life very simply. You have two choices. You spend the rest of your life chasing what everybody else expects you to chase, or you start living within peace within you and attract what's meant for you. I don't, the manifestation, all those things are, I don't fully buy into that, but I do buy into, if you step into your soul's purpose and you heal your personal trauma and you grow through your experience, that what is meant for you will attract to you.
So, I want to ask you a question. You said that this whole experience brought you to this place of having no attachment to people, places, things, and at the same time, what really pushed you to go to leave the hospital and go was your three kids. So that's
100%.
attachment, right?
No,
So
my role in their life is to guide their journey, not control their journey. My style of parenting is conscious parenting. It is very different than most parents anywhere in the world that I've ever met. I'm meeting a few here and there, but the reality is it's conscious parenting. Understanding that their journey is their journey to own. I do my best not to impose any beliefs on them. I don't push. I want you to be a doctor. I want you to be a lawyer. This is in America, this is what has been done for generations. I want you to be, you need to be a lawyer. You need to be a doctor. You need to be successful. You need to go to school for all these years. You need to go to high school. You need to find a sweetheart or whatever it is. Then you need to get married. You need to buy a house. You need to have kids. Next thing you know, you're $1 million in debt and starting your life. And then you're a slave for the rest of your life to that debt. So what I do with my children is very different. I want you to give effort. I want you to do the best you can in each moment. Sometimes that's an F, sometimes it's an A. But if you promise me that you're giving effort, I don't care where you end up, because you're going to be exactly where you're meant to be. It's not my job to tell you how to live your life. I'm going to be dead before they are their own adults, right? Before they're at their point in their journey where they need to be. So why would I want to control how their life goes? That makes it selfish and about my pride over them. I am proud of them for breathing. I'm not proud of them for what they achieve. I unconditionally love myself now. That's one of the gifts of the stroke. So the worst, the warts, the hair, the this, the that, being overweight, smoking cigarettes, all these things that people would say these are flaws. I love it. I love those facets of me. I love my triggers. I love my trauma, because in my trauma, it's given me the fortitude, the understanding to relate to others. to be able to support them on their journey. It's all gifts. These are all gifts. It's all about the effort. I don't punish, I don't do any of those things, but what I do is rewarded takeaways, right? I do it in a gentle, more conscious way of parenting. I don't limit my kids' screen time. I don't do any of those things. I don't tell them what they can and can't do. I give them trust so that they learn to trust themselves. Because at the end of the day, they need to trust themselves. And if I start taking things away or telling them no, and you can't do that, you're not old enough, all I'm doing is taking it away from them and telling them that I don't trust them. I'd rather them be in my house under my roof, make their mistakes, and I'll guide them through healing through it. I want them to feel the emotional spectrum, learn their own lessons. Because if I enable them, I protect them, I put them in a bubble, what's going to happen when they move out of the house? This is why we live in an age of entitlement. Because we want to protect our kids. We want to go out of the way. We want to really keep them safe. But the problem is that's a very flawed way of thinking. Because the only way you learn your lessons is by going through them. And we want to protect our kids so much that we want to take the lessons away, which then makes them entitled and enabled. So when they become adults, they don't know how to wash their clothes. They don't know how to do certain things. And each child is different. All three of my kids are different. They were all different ages when they went through their trauma. They're different ages now. They heal in different ways. They're individuals. I can't treat them all the same. Sunday, all four of us were triggered. Me and my three kids, all four of us were triggered. So it exploded. We screamed. We yelled. There was crying. There was tears. And then an hour later, I sat down with them and we talked through it reflectively without the emotional attachment to it. And next thing you know, all of us are sitting there crying and apologizing to each other. But they learned that they are safe in their emotions. They're safe to feel. They're safe to heal through it and grow through it rather than just being in it. Because, what I learned is from my own experience of my trauma that I went through, when we start taking their experiences away, they subconsciously believe that we don't trust them. Because that's how they perceive it. Again, just because they're kids doesn't mean their perception isn't true to them. Stop telling them how their perception is. That's when you have them rebel and do stuff that goes outside of character. But if you build them up with self-awareness, self-understanding, self-love, then they're going to start loving themselves. They're not going to do things that go against themselves. My problem is I wasn't raised that way. So I chased externally to fill the voids, the trauma, the pain, to numb it. I was addicted to drugs and alcohol for 18 years. I started drinking at 9, doing hardcore drugs at 12. And then I got sober 17 and a half years ago. But that 18-year period was me running from my trauma because I didn't want to experience it. So I've learned that I want them to be able to experience and heal. I had to protect my son from the school system. Because the way that they do it is let's give them medication, let's get them okay to be in school, which I understand on the macro level why that makes sense. But you're not helping the kids feel safe in their own skin. He looked at me and he said, "Dad, I don't want medication. I want to heal through it like you did." So we need to be more conscious and aware. And yes, parenting is a little bit more challenging when we do it this way. But they have their devices unlimitedly. I don't take it away from them. My 6-year-old has a TikTok. She does makeup videos, and she taught herself how to do makeup from watching YouTube videos. She's learning skills that she could use for the rest of her life. My 11-year-old builds YouTube channels and gets 300 to 500 followers within a month. That's a skill that he could use for the rest of his life. But if I told him that he had a screen time limit, or if I told him that he couldn't do it, he would never learn these skills. The future is on devices and on the internet. I want them to be set up to be so comfortable with it that they don't want to misuse it. They don't want to hide it. When something happens that they're uncomfortable with, a follower that makes them uncomfortable, they come to me. My 6-year-old said, "Dad, this old guy's following me and I don't know who he is, but he comments on every one of my videos." I said, "Then let's block him." So she came up to me and I showed her how to do it. That was it. They will protect themselves if you allow them to. If you teach them that they are worth it.
Because they are so aware, right? Like our kids will come and blurt things out and you'll be like, wow, I couldn't see that about that person or that situation, and they get it. They really get it. Like, talking about conscious parenting, I went through this. Like, there was a phase in which I was totally parenting from this place of control, and I need to be the perfect mother, and I need to have the perfect kids, until one day I decided chuck it all, and now let's just do what's required. So yeah, beautiful. I think your kids are really lucky to have you. And uh, when we give them that space, then they can breathe and they can just be themselves.
Yeah, I mean, example, like when they come home and they feel like they had a bad day, because you can feel their energy, right? You feel where they're at. I don't bombard them. I say, hey, I love you. How was your day? I'm here if you want to talk. And 15, 20 minutes later, they'll get a snack, they'll come by and they'll sit down and have this detailed conversation that if I tried to force out of them, I would have never got it. But because I've been practicing giving them space and they know they're safe with me, they come to me now. I don't have to worry about them seeking outside attention or anything else. They are starting to understand their own worth and their own value. So it's a beautiful thing. I mean, I'm the luckiest person in the world. I have them. I don't look at it that they're lucky to have me. I'm lucky to have them. They're my greatest teachers. I mean, if I'm having a bad day, my 6 year old, keep in mind, where she's 6, she'll come up to me and she'll be, Dad, you're off. You need to go meditate. Dad, you're off. Go journal. Dad, you're off. Go write a self forgiveness letter. Because they see the value in the work I do on myself. They understand that when I'm taking time to me, the benefit that it has in how I am as a being. And there's infinite ways to heal. So I'm not saying that my way is the best way, but it's the way I've created for me and others that it works for. But the fact that my 6 year old, who has not started facing her trauma yet, because she's still 6, but knows it's there, knows that there's healthier ways to do it, because I don't authoritative and just speak about it, I live it. Kids pick up on the way you live more than the words you say. And we're very mistaken in that. We really believe that, that's not how we live, but it's not true. I mean, they see it. They see everything. Think about when we were kids. We saw everything. And then when we become adults, we forget that. When we become parents, we forget that because of the societal, generational, and cultural imposed beliefs on us. It's like we
Yeah.
hit the adulthood and it's like, oh, I forgot about that. We hit adulthood and it's like, yeah, they can't, they don't, they're kids. What do they know? But at the end of the day, they know everything. So stop pretending like there's nothing they don't know. But we devalue them because they're little. We don't think they understand. You know what? They might not comprehend at an adult level, but I live 100% transparency with my kids about everything. When there were times where we were having financial struggles and we were on the verge of getting evicted, they knew. I don't hide from them. Because what I found was when I was hiding things from them, they knew something was off anyway. And I got irritated because I wasn't living into myself. So the easiest way to do it is to treat them like humans, whether they're adults or children, doesn't matter, and be transparent. But living transparently comes with additional accountability and responsibility. But I like to empower my children to have that. And they learn by me living the example.
Yeah, and also they get to see that all of this is part and parcel of life, right? You have the ups and you have the downs, and then if we are only showing them the ups in life, then when they have the downs, how they're not equipped to handle those, right?
Well, and that's why I want them to watch the journey and be a part of the journey. And that's really what you said, I mean, is key. I want them to see how to grow through life. Don't slide through life. Don't just swing through life. Grow through the experience. Because the experience is all we have. We want to overvalue whether we're here for 80 years, 100 years, 150 years, let's say 250 years, right? As an individual being. That is nothing on the timeline of the planet. That is nothing in the timeline of all creation. But we have to over glorify our presence and feed our ego and feed, why we're here and our importance. My
Yeah.
greatest importance is my children because they're the future, not me. I'm 44 years in already. They're between 6 and 14 years in. They have a lot more future than I do. So I just don't treat them like little kids that can't understand. I like to share the full experience with them and let them learn how to deal with stress. Let them learn how to deal with problems. Let them learn how to deal with trouble because that's important. It's a huge part of life. They'll never know how to deal with, like you said, they'll never know how to deal with those things if they don't. So, what's the example I want to teach them? To ignore those things, to escape, to go drink, to do drugs, to become a sex addict, a gambling addict, a business, an entrepreneur, and live the grind, and you have to run and chase and chase and chase external validation, or live into your purpose. Be proud of who you are, love yourself, and radiate that out to the world because that's how you impact the world. The easiest way to impact the world is by living in that space.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So, Michael, what are some tools that you can share with our viewers of like living each moment?
It's a process. It's not an overnight solution, right? This is a transition that I went through, and over the first 40 years of my life, I hated living. I didn't want to live. Absolutely hated myself. I showered in the dark for years because I hated myself so badly. Not the physical look, but just I hated myself. And then from there, it was, moving into a place for the first time in August of 2020 during COVID when I was fighting for full custody of them because of their experience. I went out there to save them. And what really happened is I ended up saving myself. And they watched my healing journey, which was the greatest gift, looking at what my 6-year-old says to me if I'm off for a day. So looking at hindsight 2020, it was the greatest gift I could ever give my kids, is them watching my journey, watching me grow through that because they absorbed it one way or another. They absorbed it for themselves. Um, it's a step-by-step process. For me, it's about a self-connection to a higher power beneath religion. I believe that we are directly connected to our higher power of our understanding, and then you build religion on top of that. So you can practice your religion, you can practice your faith, you can do all those things, but I believe that we need a direct personal connection to a higher power. Then from there, I move into self forgiveness because I believe the world doesn't understand that we have to forgive ourselves. We're always told to forgive others, we're always told to let things go. But what we don't do is forgive ourselves because that is how I built unconditional self love by releasing the resentments, the hatred, the things I didn't like about myself and holding things against myself. So then by August of 2021, I've got in love with myself. So I'm bouncing around a little bit and I apologize, but I'm trying to cover it all. So when I started getting into a place where I was in love with myself, love is blind, and I ignored my flaws and I went into slight ego and I thought my way was the best way. And I understood that it worked for me. So I wanted to share that it worked for me. What I didn't realize is the outward perception was I kept saying my way was the best way or the only way. And in fact, there's infinite ways, infinite. But this is what worked for me. So my positioning on it after the stroke of now being unconditionally in love with myself has shifted drastically to being objective and understanding that it's a way. If it aligns with you, it will work and I can coach you through it. That's easy. If it doesn't, then find ways that do for you. Absorb as much information, but stick with what aligns into your intuitive nature. We're all intuitive. The level of intuition has to do with our level of self connection. And that's where the divide is in this world today. I don't know if that was the answer, but I don't know if I answered your specific question, but I covered a lot in that.
So I think what you basically spoke about is self love, and how to get to self love is self forgiveness, which I think
100%.
is really huge because, you know, like I've spoken to a lot of people, and a lot of conversations are about not judging yourself and things like that. But I think the level of self love that I can perceive from you is really not something I've seen in a lot of people. So yeah, that's beautiful. So,
but it's taken me work to get here, and unconditionally loving myself was a reprogramming because you know we want to label things. We love labels, right? And we love separating different types of love. Friendship, familiar, relationship. Where do we list self love in those things? And the issue is love has been so manipulated culturally, generationally, just over time, that we need to now label it conditional or unconditional because love is not conditional. But I promise you, I was raised in conditional love because of generational trauma that was never addressed. You know, so it's really understanding objectively without blaming or shaming anyone that has come before us because I believe everybody does the best they can with where they're at.
oh
And
wow, I was not looking at the comments, but someone says, Parent of the Year, Michael. Yay, absolutely, absolutely.
that's Linda.
Amazing.
Linda's an amazing human being. You would love Linda.
I'm sure I would love Linda too. So, Michael, is there any last thing that you want to leave our listeners with?
Sorry, my son gave me a cold, so I'm kind of letting it flow through, and there's a little bit of coughing coming up today. Is there anything one thing I want to leave people with? Understand the value of your life. Understand that waking up is a miracle. Understand that being alive in this time where you can connect with anyone around the planet in a multitude of ways is a miracle. Understand that we are the miracle. We are our own miracle. We are our own advocate. We are our own gift. And we need to value ourselves and appreciate ourselves and decide for ourselves to go on the journey of self-understanding because nobody can do a journey of self-understanding for anybody else's self. It doesn't work that way. So, I mean, I guess that's it.
And that's the reason it's called self understanding, right? It's not others
100%.
understanding, but it's self understanding.
100%.
So, thank you so much, Michael. This was amazing. This was really brilliant. I really like the biggest thing that I think I got from our interview is you are really walking your talk. And I've interviewed a lot of people, and I think you're probably one of those very few people whom I see is absolutely, completely like walking your talk. So, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for being who you are being and sharing this with our audience.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to share space with you and share my insights and what I've grown through. And no matter where we are, I'm no better than anyone else. No one's any better than anyone else. We egoically and like to on a human level think we are because it gives us some level of an importance in this very short time frame that we're on this planet. The only thing that's here when we die, the money, the cars, the assets, the things that we acquire, none of it stays. Within 100 years of us going, 99.9% of it is gone. Now, if you're a king, you build castles, you do all these things, those might last. But your reason for doing it won't. It's the impact and the ripple that we create through
Yeah,
others that can
and
carry forward.
yeah, and once you're gone, you're gone. What does it matter how much you accumulated while you were alive, right? You can't take it back with you. So
100%.
absolutely, I totally agree with that. So thank you once again, Michael. And thank you so much for listening, you guys. And until next time, live your whole life in the boundless realm of your genius. And I will see you next week. But hey, I also wanted to invite you guys for this free online holistic well-being summit that I am going to be hosting March 6, 7, and 8. Experience a life-changing 3-day event with 12 of today's most innovative and well respectful integrative mind body health practitioners, alternative medicine healers, and practitioners. And thank you so much once again. And I will see you next week.
Thank you
Bye,
so much for
everyone.
having me.
Bye.